designers that are colorblind. I mean, like, we need to help the people who have no talent in all the different areas of art, not just in visual arts. I mean, okay, I applaud the Urban Culture Project for raising people who have absolutely no talent to the forefront of art in Kansas City. Great. But then why aren't we seeing that in every single sector of the arts community? We're not. You don't see that. And that to me is...
So why is it, are you saying, why is it in the, what is the fancy word they're using? Maybe it's up there. The generative arts?
It says, well, yeah, it's like, well, that's one of
the
things.
Or the visual arts.
I mean,
visual arts?
Their quotation here is an initiative of the Charlotte Street Foundation Urban Culture Project supports downtown revitalization and the local arts community by transforming empty storefront spaces into new venues for art exhibitions, performances, and studios. Okay? Like, they're promoting downtown revitalization by this crap?
I'm afraid this camera doesn't really...
It doesn't do justice to the lack.
If I want to be ambitious, I'll switch cameras here.
This is a demonstration of Wirecast.
If there's anybody watching, or potential of watching, ha ha ha, bear with me. Oop. Oh, I don't remember how I did that. I turned this one sideways. That's how I mess up everything. Oh, I know what I can do. I remember I had this one set up for that. When you got all these wires and everything.
I know, you see, that's the...
the fun of it.
The thing behind Batman is that you never see how difficult it is to build all these devices. You only see Batman saving the day. In this context, you kind of get to see what it takes to do a live performance.
Normal, and let's see, AVC 110. Oop, and I'm on the wrong camera. And I'm on the wrong camera still. I want camera C. There we go. All right, now you can see. See, I can zoom in on it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the audience is going to have a difficult time understanding what any of it is because it's like noise. I mean, if I were going to say, like, okay, I want you to get the equivalent sense of what this does visually in an audioscape, then I want you to put 15 channels of music on simultaneously that are completely unrelated to each other and then have a child screaming in the background. And synthesize that for me. Get a sense of that.
Isn't that kind of what is going on as far as not just here in Kansas City, but everywhere? There's this.
I don't believe so. I don't believe that's happening in Europe. I believe that the Europeans are
if
light
anybody
years
potentially
ahead of
watching us, that's what we were reading. It's up on the window of this place called Paragraph.
23 East 12th Street. Come on down.
Yep.
Bring some trash. I'm sure they'll incorporate it into the art. I bet you could go in there and dump trash on that. Nobody would notice the difference. Like, they wouldn't even realize. You see, if you went up to the Mona Lisa and threw red paint on it, people would be like, oh my God, you know, like, yeah. I really see that this thing has been damaged. But come in here, dump some Mountain Dew cans on it. It's just piles of trash. And hey, that's great. That's art. Kansas City. I mean, that's what we need to be known for. I can't wait for the rest of the art scenes around the United States to realize that we're so sophisticated that we can just use big piles of trash and pass it off as fine art.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, we are the backwater of the art scene with respect to the Urban Culture Project. We're like a cesspool of weakness and of inept. And I put the responsibility for that, the onus of that, directly on David Hughes, who, for reasons I cannot fathom, seems to be promoting the absolute weakest candidates he can find. But I think there are some people who'd be willing to sign affidavits of testimony to express their feelings as to why he's doing this. It's a rather seedy reason that I don't want to get into right now, but there are ulterior motives. I'm certain of it.
Well, I wish that I could hopefully someday have him on here or somewhere to explain this or explain himself, and defend himself.
Yeah. Well, he should. He should tell you why that makes sense.
And maybe a debate between him and yourself.
Well, why is this a reflection of urban revitalization? A big pile of trash. What does that say?
Well, it looks.
I mean, it's really difficult to get a sense.
Well, I don't know if you can say it. because it almost looks suburban in its construction.
Well, that the wooden frame does, but then you have this huge pile of trash out in front of it. Now, the thing is that if there is an artist statement, right? Like if you and I go in there and we read some profound artist statement, then the artist needs to be a writer, not a visual artist. I mean, if you can't get a sense of what the art is without an artist statement, then what is that saying about the artwork itself? It's saying that it completely and utterly fails.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've heard another artist tell me once that it was hard to get a sense of where the artist is going without an artist statement. And I'm like, but I really can't stand artist statements. I hate it when they permanently write on the wall in this nice pretty lettering these things that are essentially art PR. Like you go to a PR firm and they write the same kind of flowery words.
Right. Why don't you just put like a semi-naked model up there with like a beer can? And you know, like, I mean, it's like what does the pretty girl have to do with beer?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, that's probably a bad analogy because sometimes pretty girls have a lot to do with beer. But I tell you what, artist statements don't have anything to do with this except for somebody trying to cover up weakness, trying to cover up what is a massive fail. And that, for me, as an artist, angers me. Because I see this, and what I want to do is I want to go defecate on that. And then wipe my ass with the artist statement. And then I'll be like, now it's art. Before it was just a big pile of trash. Now it's got some of my genetics in it. And I've elevated it now to a status that it didn't achieve earlier, which is true mastery, because I left a piece of me on there.
All right.
But I mean, like I said, I'm somewhat caustic, especially when I'm a critic. Because as a critic, I feel like I am just awash in a sea of fail. And it's like I'm screaming to the public, please, look at this. Rationalize this in your minds. Tell me why this is good for our culture.
Well, I mean, for the average man.
No one confronts it.
Or the average person, what do they think of this? And besides, well, I could get my 3-year-old to do it, or maybe the average person will walk up and say, this is great stuff.
Look, this is a big party for David Hughes and company, is what it is. It's a big way for them to tout themselves as important to the scene, to continue to promote their own players within their own little slipstream, and to feel good about themselves, and to drink a lot of beer and act like hedonists. This is about hedonism. If you want to ask me, like, there's probably an artist statement and there's something about the deconstruction of the death of the American dream, but this is hedonism. And that's all it is. It's self-absorption, vanity, hedonism.
Well, there's deconstructionalism, and it's a postmodern movement, and it's a big thing in architecture. It was a big thing in architecture in the 1990s. I think they're going away from it now, but Kansas City being one of the Midwestern cities, you know, things hit the coast first and then come here at the dying end of the trend, and I think we're just starting to see a lot of deconstructionalism, and I think this stuff was kind of popular in the 90s in New York and LA, and
I mean, we have enough talented people here that we could take the stage from the East and West Coast. I mean, I think we have some of the most intensely talented, creative people here, but they're not being promoted.
A lot of talented people, when they do get stuff out there, they usually show it in New York or LA, or because it's not appreciated here.
They want to leave.
Is why people do not. Well, let me put this camera back.
But I feel like we have the right stuff. I feel like Kansas City has everything that it needs to kind of capture the torch and take the lead in visual art. The key to that, for me, is inexpensive space, because a lot of artists are shouldering tremendous overhead on the coast.
I was sort of hoping that maybe somebody would come out or come along and say, hey, what are you doing here? It's kind of sad that...
I mean, they need to have a guard for this trash. Somebody might break in and steal that. It's worth thousands of dollars. I mean, that's what the Urban Culture Project spends on it. And it's, you know, it's just lame. And there are plenty of people out there who will call it lame. I don't stand alone in that. But something tragic has happened to the visual art funding in this city. That's funneling money into people's pet projects, into their pet people. And I put David Hughes as one of the pet masters in that circus that he wants to be the ringleader of. But that's, you know, that's his thing. Right on. Go for it. I mean, I can't strip him of his resources. I think it's sad that he's a nonprofit and that people are donating money for a tax write-off, and this is the result. I mean, if this were the Lyric, do you know how fast the power elite in this city who donate money to these nonprofit organizations would snap you up by the short hairs if you ran a Lyric opera and didn't have anybody who could sing? Or you were like, hey, guess what? We're gonna do this thing. It's really popular on the coasts where people who can't sing, they just come and scream incoherently. This is great. You know what? No, absolutely not. Because you still recognize Beethoven. You still recognize Mozart.
Well,
You're still holding people to those
standards.
Let
me show you what I think is the architectural equivalent of this.
And
it's actually a very new structure. Somebody once asked me, or once wanted to sound very profound on a web forum and say, what do you think of the Art Deco architecture in Kansas City? I think it's, what they say, this is a one-way street, I think.
Oh, is it? I don't know.
Let's see,
I think, yeah, I think
they were like, I think it's, we got a lot of it.
I know, it is a two-way street.
It's very beautiful. And I said, well, the modern streamline decorative arts, which is what they called it back in France, where they invented it, started in the early part of the 20th century, and it took until almost the 1940s for it to find its way to Kansas City. The people who built the Art Deco architecture in Kansas City were very conservative businessmen, and they wanted what looked modern and made Kansas City up to date. So when it came here to this conservative city, it was neither outstanding nor unique, and we don't have what I would consider to be a lot of great Art Deco architecture as compared to other areas. And Art Deco, by the way, was never a phrase that was coined until the 1960s, when it became popular. Back when you went to a building like the Power and Light building, which is a beautiful Art Deco building.
Absolutely. More familiar for its role in Ghostbusters, maybe, than its role as crowning achievement in Kansas City.
But when you go to the Power and Light building, if you went to the building when it was built new, you would say, hey, this is a nice new modern building. You wouldn't go, hey, this is a nice new Art Deco building.
Right.
And so in architecture, they have this thing that had been going around, postmodernism, which to me, postmodernism means the aesthetics, but not the structure, the outer skin of things.